Great. Good morning, USA, Canada. Good afternoon in Europe, UK. Good evening in Asia Pacific. Be it Thailand, Malaysia, Singapore, India, and neighboring countries. And late good evening in Australia. There are people who join from Australia, and in fact, the guest of honor today is from Brisbane, Australia. It's 10 p.m. for her. Ladies and gentlemen, it's indeed pleasure to have on my show hashtag Women Power, a global movement, every Saturday evening. Women Power today, a par excellence, a par excellence. Her name is Amanda Karpeles, Chief Executive Officer of Raise DM, Brisbane, Australia. I would like to welcome Amanda to this powerful show. And ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce the lady of guts who turned all her debacles into opportunities, continuously struggling through and through from the age of 5. I repeat, from the age of 5. And every time there was a new struggle, it's very complicated. She broke the struggle into pieces, kept moving. The stories of a woman power with that guts and galore leading to glory, which she is today. You would, in the course of discussions, probably cry out how this bold, tough, but compassionate women did all those things which normally a girl child or even a woman could not even think about. But with her sheer perseverance, persistence, she kept trying it out to keep herself, her sick parents, and her siblings going. The story has touched my heart deeply and profusely. One side, I'm feeling so sad, but knowing her is indeed pleasure. Because here comes a woman who could get stuck with not ordinary issues and challenges, most of the toughest situations of life. But her boldness, her toughness, with commitment and dedication, and made her journey where she is today. She has really made a great name for her in life. But the painful days of yesteryears, I will not say must be haunting her. I will not use the negative word because she is a very positive person, but must be in back of her mind. And she must be getting up from her sleep, even now, thinking, was it a dream? A bad dream? That is the kind of story that is being shared today. Those who have already joined us, or those who will be joining us, or those who will be watching this YouTube later, I can bet it that you will certainly remember, never forget this kind of a story of a woman, starting from a child of just 5 years old, struggling, slogging, stressing, stretching, but leading to success. She is brave Amanda. That's what I could get from her story, which I just shared with you. But I leave it to her to share her story when we go to the questions. But let me formally talk about her. Amanda is a Brisbane based entrepreneur who has developed an emergency communication platform that offers an agile solution of remote and isolated work where a flexible platform is needed for fluid situation. Amanda's work has been elevating performance and bringing safety communication to the front line. The benefits are beyond safety. They extend to productivity enhancements and employee engagement. Amanda has extensive legal, business, and financial management experience over 2 decades, having incorporated and run her own legal practice. Before that, Amanda has been a partner in national law firm in Australia for a number of years. Amanda has a Master's of Health and Science, OHS, and combined bachelor's degree, arts and law, with majors in law and psychology. Amanda, Amanda has, in fact, during her legal frame, let me just Amanda, during her legal tenure, acted with large and small enterprises, individuals in all areas of injury law, appearing in most courts from magistrate up to high court of law. She has forensically examined around 4,000 workplace injuries in conjunction with experts to identify the legal culpability around accidents relating to workplace prosecutions, coronial inquiries, to workers' compensation liabilities. During this time, she had learned that poor communication has contributed to the severity of the occurrence of many, if not most, injuries. Amanda is youngest of five, born in Zimbabwe. Her family left during the Civil War in late 70s following death threats to the family due to her father's high profile position. They moved firstly to New Zealand and then to Australia when she was a child. Her father died when she was 16. Amanda has always had to be completely independent. She did work in onion factories to fund her university study, as also valued and enjoyed the opportunities travel and study brought her. A love of life and innovation inspired by things around her and her experiences while traveling with a close family and a son who is 12-year old, who is 12-year old. She firmly believes a strong international community will be the integral of the success of local communities moving forward, and safety and confidence building will be the integral part of that. Her long-term goal is to see personalized approach to elevate safety performance that is integrated across work, public and private spaces. What a great profile of yours, Amanda. I am really fortunate to have met you. I again thank Ash in Brisbane to have connected you to me. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you. Before we start, can I just acknowledge Brisbane? That's the Turrbal people and their descendants, and pay respect to their elders past, present and emerging. Thank you.
Amanda, we will be together for an hour. I have some questions for you and people who are on different platforms will be raising their questions. And in fact, it's going to be something which is going to be exciting and thrilling for them to look at you as a person whose saga of story is the story of success finally. And they will raise their questions and I will facilitate their questions also. And those who are on Zoom, I would certainly be allowing them to ask their questions themselves. Are you ready?
Thank you.
Oh my God, your story is so made me so mad. I made me a fan of yours at the same time. Amanda, when I was trying to find out about you as a woman of excellence, doing so much of great work today, I found that you were born in Zimbabwe. Your father was district commissioner, and you were at the age of 5, along with your siblings. Your father was threatened to be killed, and you and your family decided to leave and save your lives. Your journey to New Zealand was really a nightmare. I, along with audience, would be keen to know how did you manage to flee against those turbulent and tough situations, and how did you finally reach New Zealand? Over to you, Amanda.
Thank you, DK. Look, my early primary school years were in Zimbabwe, and my father was a district commissioner, and that meant that he had to travel a lot. He was a hardworking man, and he spoke several different dialects of the local Indigenous population. But he was a very respectful person, and whenever he worked with those communities, he would speak with them directly in their own language. And I think part of that has been passed on to me. Security was always an issue, particularly before we left Zimbabwe. My father, whenever we travelled anywhere, we would travel in an armed convoy. By the time I was 8, my father was told by our cook that there was in effect a plot to assassinate him and to assassinate our local magistrate. And accordingly, he decided to make plans to immigrate. At the time, he was already suffering from cancer. This was following an unsuccessful removal of a melanoma when he was from much younger. And he was determined to try and find somewhere for us to go as a family of 7 where we could be safe. And so he sold everything and made plans for us to move to New Zealand. He chose New Zealand because he felt that it had some prospects of opportunity for us as children. Our bank accounts were frozen, and when we left, we had literally 100 Rhodesian dollars, and that was it. First of all, we travelled to South Africa. Before we went, though, my mother wanted for us children to see the Victoria Falls, and so we made a last trip there. And while we were there, that's when things started to go wrong. The party directly in front of us was shot at from across the river, Zambezi, and so we made a quick turnaround and we were evacuated, and we never made it to the main falls. We basically had to pack up and leave, and Dad sold his, I think it was a Volvo in those days, and bought an old Valiant, and that was bigger than the Volvo, so that was designed to get us to the port where we would be leaving. We were going by boat, and basically we travelled by convoy from Shabani down to the border. And unfortunately, by the time we got to South Africa, the boat had been cancelled. And so we had no way of getting to New Zealand. So my parents spent frantic hours trying to find our luggage and find all of our possessions and book them on a different flight, a different boat. And so they managed to do that. And it was a few days into the future. So we then had to fly. And so we booked all of our last money went on airfares to get us to New Zealand. And so we flew out of Joburg. But before we even made it to the airport, my father had to take the car down to Durban to put on the boat. And my two older brothers travelled with him. He also had to go and get a passport, but there was a delay in issuing his passport. And so he was late to the airport. And my mother was literally at the airport with our luggage already booked in, fighting and arguing that they not unload our possessions and leave us behind, and that they just give us another few minutes for my father to arrive. And luckily he arrived in those last few moments, and we were allowed to board and to leave. Sorry?
I don't know what to say. The way you are sharing your story as if it has been just normal, I can understand what must have been going through with the entire family. Ladies and gentlemen who are watching now or going to be watching later, just understand what is going on to the human race in this world. We Indians talk about one world, one love, one human race. And see what's going on around the world. And she's talking about 1970s when she had to flee, and how did she went to South Africa along with her family, and finally getting into New Zealand. And story is not ended here. It is a continuous struggle of a family and a girl child who is just 5 to 6 year old. Amanda, my next question is, I am told after reaching New Zealand, it was another tough, difficult, unprecedented time for you. Did not seem to have any luck coming your way. Then you moved to Tasmania in Australia. How was finally your entering Australia kicked off? And what were the immediate challenges you and your family faced? How painful it would have been for you and your family to get going against all tough odds and finally getting into Tasmania. Can you please share this part of journey of tough situation of you and your family?
Thank you. Look, when we arrived in New Zealand, we had very little money. 1,000 Rhodesian dollars was not a lot. And my father managed to rent a property with 3 bedrooms. And my mum was desperate to get some work. She was chronically short-sighted, so she suffers from chronic short-sightedness. So she's legally blind. And so she managed to get some teaching work, and that was enough to pay some of the more urgent bills. With 5 kids in a 3-bedroom house, my oldest brother slept in the lounge room, and it took a couple of months before we even had belongings because they had been delayed on the boat. When they finally arrived, they came in a big wooden container, and I remember that my father then wallpapered the container, and he put a door on the side, and he put a window into the container, and that then became my oldest brother's bedroom. You can imagine in New Zealand, in Auckland, in winter, it was cold and damp, but he loved it. Just a little bit of space from having been living in a very small bedroom. When we arrived in New Zealand, we were told that we couldn't stay, and unfortunately, things just started to go wrong. We'd made this big trip with all of our possessions, hoping to be able to start again. And basically, we were told that we couldn't stay because we had 5 children. And I'm the youngest of 5. So when my mother used to joke, which child should I have left behind? I kind of think, not me. But, with no money, we didn't have anywhere to go. So we really were looking at going back to Zimbabwe. And so we sold all of our belongings and we were left literally with 1 suitcase each. And we didn't even keep most of our family photos. A local agent, though, had said to us, because they were trying to find an alternate place for us to go, and he had said to my parents, look, stay at home, lock your doors and windows, keep the kids out of school, and don't answer it to anybody, and just wait to hear some news from me. And that extra time was enough because they had to personally serve the deportation papers. And so if they couldn't get a reply at the house, then it just gave us that extra 2 or 3 days. And luckily that was enough. My uncle and my aunt, who were living in Tasmania in Australia, had managed to convince the Australian government to give us a visa to come into Australia. And so we were basically evicted from New Zealand on Christmas Eve, and we arrived in Tasmania on Christmas Eve in 1977. It was a very strange life. We had a family of 7 and we moved into a house with 3 people. So you can imagine the turmoil that we brought with us.
Too tough, very complicated. Amanda, I understand all of you then picked up all kinds of jobs, such as delivering papers, mowing lawns, helping around the community, worked at stores such as Kmart and Coles. You have faced all kind of challenges. And your dad even was sewing and repairing clothes, helping to clean things as your mom could not see. Your dad was pushing all of you to be independent. And in the process, you learned how to use power tools, be it bench saws, drills, electrical wood planes, how to fix and build cupboards, beds, most of our furniture, what we have. Could you please share this another painful, tough journey of yours as small children?
Look, when we moved into my uncle's house, he had 1 baby that had, I think Angela was a few months, 2 years old, I think. And so we really created chaos. And so it meant that there had to be a very strict regimen for us to be able to cope in a new family environment with people that we'd never met. My aunt and uncle were very, very generous and very, very patient, but we all had to pitch in and work, and we would, set fireplaces and clean out the fireplace. My twin brother, and I'm a twin, my twin brother actually set fire to the wooden deck outside the house because he'd emptied the fireplace and the coals onto a wooden deck and they were still hot. So he'd set fire to the house. So, we caused chaos, and it was through the goodwill of others that we were able to struggle and to get ahead. We picked up newspaper rounds. We'd, wrap papers at 4 o'clock in the morning into plastic and then climb on our bikes to go and deliver them. We used to mow lawns. I used to go around all the shops and people where they had businesses and they used to have small patches of grass. We would push our lawnmower around the town in order to mow. And we did that until one day our lawnmower was stolen, which made things rather complicated. So we had to change and do other things, but we didn't have the money to replace the lawnmower. So once that was stolen, we had to do other things. I think my father was a very talented man. He basically built the house, and he managed to borrow money to build. He bought a very small house and then built onto it so that 7 of us could fit into it. And within 12 months, we'd moved into our own house. My mother managed to get a teaching position with the local school, and the nun there was very, very generous because she knew Mum couldn't see, and she just said to her, you know, are you a good teacher and can you do a good job? And Mum said yes, and so she did, and she was given that trust to have a go. She was one of those people who was very, very hardworking, and she had developed strategies to deal with her short-sightedness. Basically, we all helped to build the house, and that's really why we were given the opportunity to learn the power tools, you know, because we would be building beds and cupboards. We would climb up to do the painting on the side of the house. We'd climb into the roof to pull cabling through for the lights because we were small, you know, and Dad would say, you know, pull this through. So in some ways it was a hard time, but it was a very community oriented time, and it brought us together as a family.
Amazing. When I look at that part of your journey, and today you are one of a well-known lawyer in Australia. You're one well-known safety expert in not only in Australia, globally. I cannot even think about the journey or painful process which you have gone through, especially when I look at your mom and dad, because you lost your father at the age of 16, and your mom, again, after sad sickness, and you have to take care of them. So that means both mom and dad mentored you, built you up. Am I right in saying that?
Absolutely. I would have regarded them as my very first true mentors, you know, but they didn't know anything about business in Australia, and they were living day to day. You know, it was financially subsistence. With 5 kids, you know, we used to go shopping with 2 trolleys and fill one up with bread and the other with milk and everything else that we could afford. But it was very economic, and my parents, they worked very hard in those days to try and keep us afloat. Um, you know, Dad used to have to do cleaning around the house because Mum was short-sighted and she couldn't see, and she certainly couldn't use a sewing machine. We couldn't afford to buy new clothes, so Dad used to fix them. In fact, he used to make us clothes so that we could be comfortable. So he even sewed a sail for a small boat for us, so we had something to enjoy.
From a commissioner, he was a commissioner in Zimbabwe. He went to this level of doing it for the family, and all of you struggling, all shambles across, one by one, one by one, one by one. How come you dreamed to be a lawyer when you were in year 11? Who mentored you? Because your parents, of course, they did not have any knowledge about how to do business and all that, but who was that mentor who believed in that guts and galore and that feel in you of becoming a lawyer when you shared your concept that I want to become a lawyer, whereas everybody around was giving you negativity? How did you turn this challenge into an opportunity? I'm very eager to know. And women power around the world who are listening to you now or will be looking at this YouTube later, understand how tough. And then she gets into something which is unknown, unparalleled, and unprecedented at the same time, and unthinkable at a situation. Tell us about getting into a lawyer.
Well, when I was in grade 10, so my father died when I was 16 in grade 10, and it was a very difficult year for our whole family. My education at the time was really, really strained. The school, because we were taking time off to care for my father, had basically given us an ultimatum that if we took any more time off, that we wouldn't be able to sit our high school exam. And that was a pretty severe blow. At the time, we were getting quite a lot of comments from people about just not aspiring. My English teacher in grade 10 made a comment to me that I shouldn't study English in grade 11 because I wouldn't do very well and I would be better to find, something else to do. And at that difficult time, it's just not what I needed to hear. There was, in contrast, though, there was a sociology teacher who I must say was very, very generous and kind. She was quite a scary woman, and she was a bit portly. And she once took me aside about the same time as this teacher had told me not to study English. And she'd said to me, Amanda, look, you could be a lawyer if you wanted to, but you need to keep your options open. And with that in mind, I decided to do English because you can understand you can't become a lawyer without having English under your belt. So I was then determined to keep my options open. And that was the nudge that I needed. And it meant a lot to me to have somebody show that trust in perhaps, who I was and what I could be. So I was determined. I started working nights. I used to do community work, helping those with disability. My father died of cancer. So as soon as I was old enough, I volunteered to work at Camp Quality, which is a camp experience for kids with cancer. And I worked to get my Duke of Edinburgh award. So that involves a number of community-oriented goals, including helping members of the community. I chose to look after some elderly people, and I would go around and collect firewood for them and have a chat and keep them company and try and do things that perhaps that they were having difficulty doing. So I would say probably the teachers around me were probably my first supports that helped me to keep going and to find my direction. Yeah.
Yeah, teachers again, the parents are the great mentors, and the teachers, of course, again are great mentors. And I always believe that in case I get a God and a teacher in front of me, I will salute the teacher first and then the God, because teachers are the builders of the future generations of the future global world. And in fact, that is where the education system comes in. And I always keep talking about my guru. His name is Padma Shri Dr. Preetham Singh. And he always used to say we lost him in COVID. And just 5 days before we lost him, he said at my webinar, he said, countries are not destroyed by weapons. Countries are not destroyed by weapons. Countries are destroyed by poor quality of education. So poor quality of education is not only the curriculum, it is not what, it is how it is taught. The teacher's impact is enormous. Like I'm sitting here today, I have a full impact of my teacher, which is Padma Shri Preetham Singh. I salute and respect him wherever he is. Amanda, while all this is happening, you are struggling, you are slogging, you are stretched, you are stressed to make both ends meet. And other side, you are getting into your lawyer program. At the same time, you became multitasking, multi-skilled. You loved sports, you spent time on playing hockey, indoor cricket, and touch football. You helped to coach a mixed gender indoor cricket team. You played representative level such as Tasmania at one point of time in football. How come? How did you shape this kind of multitasking, multi-skilling at the same time, side by side, being part of the law firm in Nottingham? What is Amanda? I am still not able to understand. So, Amanda, can you share this part of your life?
I loved sport, and I used to spend all of my spare time playing sport. as part of the Duke of Edinburgh Award, I did a 75-kilometre marathon with a group where we each had to run a leg, and then we would swap out, the next person would run. It was a time where it brought people together, and it maybe the endorphins of running, I don't know, but I just loved sport. I used to play hockey all of Saturday. I used to play for the school. I used to play for the local community in the women's team, and touch football was something that just became a passion. And so that allowed me to travel to Canberra to be part of, a state-based representative side. And it gave me the sense of something outside of Tasmania. So that really made me aspire to want to travel. And so I started working. At night. I used to work in an onion factory. I collected my money, and this allowed me to go to university. And to begin with, I used to actually have to work night shift because it paid the best, but I actually had to delay starting university so that I could finish the onion seasons, so that I could earn enough money to get me to university. I worked in the evenings when I was at university. It was, in the south of the state in Hobart. And so I used to travel down in my mother's car. She used to give me the car. She didn't drive in those days, obviously, but it meant that my other siblings couldn't get access to the car. So it was very generous of her to give me the car. But towards the end of my university course, I was able to shift from working in onion factories to actually getting summer clerkships in the law firm that was local in Burnie. And so I used to work there, and I managed to get enough money to be able to travel, and that took me to the UK, and that's where I got the paralegal position in Nottingham, and I stayed there for almost 2 years, and I loved every moment of it because it just gave me a sense of freedom, of really exciting new things that I felt that you can achieve in life. It was one of those things that then really drove me to want to succeed as well. I've always had the courage to ask for promotions, and although I've never been formally mentored, I think being the youngest of five, you learn a bit of tenacity or a bit of resilience that was enough to push me through. And I've always had really good quality role models around me. My family, my very close friendship group of women that have always kept me on track in university, and they've all wanted to do worthwhile things themselves. And so having those types of supports around you is very uplifting and supportive. And even though there was really, really toxic people around from time to time, I surrounded myself with people who cared. And it's that, you listen to the people who mean something to you, and you know that they talk the truth, and so the negativity means less.
Courage of conviction, courage of continuously fighting it out. Amanda, amazing story. I have had till now, ladies and gentlemen, around 46 stories, women of excellence from different parts of the world under this hashtag Women Power Global movement. Some of the stories have been maybe tough, but then they carried on and they had achieved excellence. But some of these stories have been tough, nothing in hand, working in onion factories and paying for your fees and becoming a lawyer, becoming well known and creating a name for yourself. This is what is storytelling concept of mine, and where those women who are in stress, who are in strain, should look for these role models. When they can do it, why can't I do it? That is the purpose and objective of this Women Power a Global movement, sharing with the world. A lady working in onion factory at the age of 5, at 6 or 10, struggling with parents to keep both ends meet, and finally getting into this. Amanda, finally as a legal expert, you started winning cases and cases and cases. How did you get through as a profession which is dominated by male? It is said there were multiple situations wherein you felt in very odd and compromising situation of your ethics, especially when we talk about men's club. What were those tough moments of your life which you fought against and came out as a winner? It's absolutely important to understand how did you have that courage, confidence, grit, and will to be different that made you what you are today. Kindly share.
Look, law is a very male-dominated career. Certainly, when I started, there were very few women who were partners in law firms, and gender-based comments were very common. In fact, even by customers who would come in to get legal advice, particularly as I was young, they would say, "Are you even a lawyer? Are you old enough to give me advice?" But I was tough in that I was the youngest of five, and we'd learnt a fair bit of resilience. So I managed to be confident and bullish enough to be able to convince them that I knew exactly what I was talking about. And I worked hard. I made sure that I knew what I was doing, and I made sure that what I was saying was correct. And I was never prepared to compromise my sense of ethics. I've got a strong sense of compassion and caring, and I've always tried to maintain that in everything that I do. So, after winning a difficult case, I'll give you an example. I won a court case, and I was in Brisbane by this time after I'd come back from the UK, and the firm had needed the cash flow because, there are people to pay wages and salaries. And so my winning this case that had been going for a number of years was a huge success. And at the end of it, the partner and the solicitors, who were men, had said, "Let's go and celebrate." And they suggested a pub or a club, which was renowned for having topless women. So you can imagine I just declined. I didn't go. But, the next time a court case happened and I won, they made a suggestion that we went to a men's club. So this time I was decided that I would go, and I stayed there for as long as I could. And I made sure that they, waited until I left before they could proceed to go into the men's only area, which is where they wanted to go. So, I tried to push back against the sort of comments that were made, just to make sure that they understood that it was my success that they were celebrating. And I don't know whether I made any influence on them, but hopefully. But I worked hard, and within 5 years I became a partner in that law firm. In fact, it almost fell into my lap because there'd been a number of setbacks in the firm, and the partners in the business were having some losses. And so I could see some gaps. And so I went to the partners and I said to them, "Look, I need the authority to be able to teach the people that I'm working with so that they know how to give advice, and to be able to improve some of the culture in the firm." And the partner said to me, "Amanda, what you're asking for is to become a partner." And then he said, "Sure." And he promptly made me a salary partner in that firm. And from there, I worked for another 10 years in that firm, went through a number of mergers and acquisitions, and eventually became a national firm. And I stayed with the firm for a few more years. But the problem is as the firm grew, my influence became less, and I became very frustrated with it. It's difficult. You make hard decisions as a lawyer, and I was lucky in that there were a couple of colleagues that were particularly helpful to me, that would remind me, of the importance of the decisions I was making. And they would say, "You're only as good as your last advice, Amanda." And I've always remembered that. It's been sage advice. And so that's kept me working, keeping my interests of my customers in the forefront of my mind to make sure that I do what I can, and I've got no regrets. And so when I am dealing with, male customers who would argue on the phone until the phone would go flat. And then they'd borrow the barrister's phone to phone back and finish the discussion, just because they wanted to get me riled up so that I would go into court and be, all macho and masculine. And it just wasn't necessary. I was always going to give my all for that customer. And I did, and we had some great successes. So, it's important to remember that, I was able to manage to tread a fairly fine line between, being masculine and strong, but at the same time, not compromising my own ethics. And I was confident in what I was doing. And so I didn't feel angry or upset. I was always supported at home, in my home environment. And so this gave me the confidence to be able to tell them, what they needed to hear, and to run the trials as I would run them. And so, it is what it is.
Amanda, when I look at your journey, it has been full of complicated heart attacks, rather. And you finally topped and became someone known in the legal stream. And you kept moving forward. But suddenly, I see that you went to do Masters of Health Science. How come you are into the present regime, what you are running? How are you now building on the new level of excellence that you have identified in yourself for the safety and the software? How come suddenly from legal? And is there any connect between the legal and safety and software? And how is it going to be another journey of powerful excellence for you?
Look, I was always motivated to work hard, and I thoroughly enjoyed it most of the time. But it got to a point where I was a partner in a national firm. We brought in a new partner. I brought him in, and I didn't share his values. And so it changed my view of where the law was going. I became very cynical. And although I tried to influence the decisions, I felt that basically the law had become lost, and I didn't enjoy being there anymore. I craved autonomy. So I decided to actually start my own law firm. And I began that in 2008. And I started my own law firm. My staff that I worked with in the firm, in my department, came with me. And we started a law firm. We were cash flow positive from day one. And it was a great success. And I thoroughly enjoyed working there. I have no regrets. But even then, I enjoyed the business side now more than I enjoyed the law. The law had changed. And what I found was that the cases we ran, the people we were representing were being given money that was precisely calculated for their future needs. If you have a workplace injury, then you get compensated for what you're going to need to be able to survive into the future. But the legal costs were no longer paid out of the settlement sum if you were successful. And what I found then was that we were taking part of that money that they needed to survive as legal fees. And the pressure was to take more than, what was really, really possible for them to survive on. And it didn't make me very comfortable at all. I became very jaded with the legal system, and I felt that, it had lost its spark. So I fell back on my mother's hard work ethic, and I decided that I was going to try and do something different, try and do something proactive. I just didn't feel comfortable. So around about that time, my partner was diagnosed with cancer and was going through chemo. But we made the decision to sell my business and to downsize, get rid of a lot of our debt. And I went back to school for 2 years. We spent the money that I made from the law firm both on my going back to school and supporting us. My partner also worked as well, so that gave us extra security. And I decided to do a master's in health science so that I could actually do something that was proactive on the other side of the law. Instead of dealing with the aftermath of injury, I wanted to do something that might actually make a difference before injuries occur. So, whilst my partner was going through chemo, and I must say, I went to every single chemo treatment, and we would walk together for exercise, and we would spend time together. So, looking back at those really, really tough times, it was also a very close family time. And my son didn't really understand the process. It can be very confronting when your hair falls out when you've had chemo, but my partner was very, very methodical and scientific, and basically said, we'll get through this. And we did. So at that time, I worked very hard when I could, and I created a safety product that I felt would be able to be part of changing the world. And it's one small step, but I do intend to get there one day.
Wow. So you are happy with what you are doing now at the top of your excellence, a combination of legal safety and software. Am I right?
Look, as you introduced, I've forensically examined 4,000 workplace injuries. I've got a very strong sense of what goes wrong. And what I want to do is I want to try and change how we approach safety. I want it to make it that it's not something that you put your hat on when you come to work. I want it to be something that's always part of your life. When you walk out the door and you go home, that you are still applying those principles and you still have access to tools that can help you in the community, with your family, and going about any activity, whether you're traveling or doing a sport or hiking, to be able to have that extra layer of support. And I think that's going to become increasingly important into the future.
Struggle to surging of excellence, pain to gain. Now, at the end, Amanda, what all you have shared, can you tell those women who are in distress, dismay, what are your messages to them? How you stressed out, stretched out, and kept going? What's your advice to the women? And how will you ensure that you give your advice to them that they also have guts and galore and they also go to glory? What do you wish to communicate to those women?
What I would say is look for those around you that speak kindly and that are genuine, and share your worries with those people, but still be cautious. They have to earn their trust. You have to basically find somebody who is going to respect you and be part of your success. Weigh the information that you're given, and don't judge yourself by the outcome of what happens from your endeavors. You have to judge yourself by what you've managed to achieve in the circumstances that are presented to you. And I think that's really, really important, because a lot of women will look at something and say that they've failed, even though they've actually succeeded in achieving quite a lot, but their personal circumstances have made it all the more difficult. And I think only then will women be able to move and keep moving forward. And I think, being part of a community of women and being part of a community with men who share women's aspirations, then it will lead us forward.
Very great. Great messages. Last question. I am running this hashtag Women Power a Global movement. 100,000 women on this platform by 21 and 1 million by 2024. What do you mean by women empowerment? And how will you support this cause, which I have taken in hand? It's a mad cause.
Look, I think being part of an international community is really, really important. And I think even a small action can have a ripple effect. And sorry, my throat. I'm keen to have an impact wherever I can, and I'd like to be part of a network or a hub of mentors, be some sort of resource where people can get advice or at least be supported.
Very good. So we would certainly like to involve you into this without fail. Ladies and gentlemen, I am now looking at your questions, and the first question I am getting from is Anisha Azad. Anisha is asking, Amanda, you had so much tough and difficult situation. Normally, a woman would have not taken it forward. What makes you different from other women?
Look, perhaps being the youngest of five, but I would say having women around me that have given me some guidance, but also I think having a strong sense of who I am and wanting to do good.
Second question comes from Angie. Angie is asking, Amanda's story is really tough and, as DK Bakshi says, surging from struggle to surging. Amanda, you are going to the top of the ladder of lawyer would have made you more stronger. Why did you change your line?
I think because I didn't see that I was contributing in a meaningful way. I felt that my effort wasn't being rewarded, and I didn't see a way forward. In those days, there were very few female partners, and I think one of the biggest impediments to women succeeding in law is beginning to change. I hope that I've been part of that. When I first went to a law conference, I remember a very senior judge, a woman, giving an introduction, and she said that when she had first started law, she became a barrister. It was during the Second World War, and she said that she had applied to become a barrister and it had been declined. And when she asked why, they said it because in order to become a barrister, you needed to be a fit and proper person. And whilst they had no problem with her being fit and proper, they felt that she wasn't a person in the sense that the law determined at that time. And it made an impression on me that it was just such an absurd interpretation. And so I hope she certainly influenced me. I hope somewhere along the line that I've influenced others, but I felt that in my own way to be able to make some sort of difference, I felt that I had to do something new. And I felt technology now is at a place where we can use it to make some really good in the world. And I think, having a solution that you can use to stay safe, whether you're traveling or working remotely, or whether your children are clubbing or going, into the community. I think this is one way that I can try and make a small difference.
Great. One more question coming from Envy Palos. Can Amanda describe the invisible force from within at the most difficult and tough times?
Look, yeah, I grew up in a Catholic family, and my father was a very devout Catholic. Whilst I'm not strongly Catholic, not in the sense that he ever was, having that community that I could see that he was part of, it showed me that there's more to the person than the individual, that we're all part of a collective. And I think probably knowing that probably helped me to know that, there were people out there that were doing it much tougher than I was. We had help from, the nun when my mum started teaching. We were given a lot of generosity and a lot of support. And it's seeing that around me that really gave me a sense of purpose, to know that, being part of a community would be important. And to be part of a community means being committed to that. And so I wanted to have a meaningful involvement with the community. And so, I felt that I could become a lawyer. And so I became a lawyer. And now I feel that I can do something around safety to really be able to drive, us into the 22nd century, 23rd century. I would love to see my software being used in 10 years from now all over the world. and to be something that is part of everybody's life where I can contribute. If I've saved one person, either by allowing them to get help sooner or by preventing them from being injured in the first place, then I feel I've achieved something. And the problem is I will never know because I don't necessarily hear the stories from it. But I've heard enough anecdotal stories from some of my customers to know that I'm making a difference, and that keeps me going.
One more question coming from Prachi Desai. Prachi is saying that we still see a lot of women leaders missing at the top of the corporate world as well as in the political arena. What is your view looking at some of the leading ladies at New Zealand, Germany, who have made women power proud? Who are your role models among all these ladies?
I think that there is a huge movement that is gaining momentum, and I want to be part of that. And I think being a person who's proud of what I'm doing and feels like I'm doing something that's really, really meaningful. Hopefully, I will in some way, like the teacher when I was at high school and said to me, "Look, Amanda, you could be a lawyer if you keep your options open." I want to be able to influence people to make those types of decisions where I can be seen to be part of a journey, even though it's not in a big way. And I would love to be part of a community where there's an online hub or forum where we can just chat or answer people's questions or just offer some condolences or support. I know that I'm fortunate. I've had a strong group of women around me, and I know that there are many women that don't. Um, one of the groups that I've come into contact with has been women in family and domestic violence, and community services groups use my software in order to stay safe when they're supporting people, for example, who have to go to court. So I think it's really important that we elevate those stories and make them absolutely out there in the front. So everybody is talking about how are we going to solve these problems. And I think everybody has to come on board. It's not just a women's journey. It's a community. It's a journey of a community. And hopefully it's a journey for an international community so that, we can all make that progress. Because I think until women are supported and shown respect in every corner of the globe, then I think we haven't succeeded. And I think that we are poorer for it. As a community, I think we are all poorer for it because our community is judged by how we treat each other. And I think how we treat women needs to be elevated.
Beautiful. I think I have to take a last question. Oh, we are already 70 minutes. So last question is coming from Girija Pandita. Girija Pandita is saying, you always, to DK Bakshi, you always get excellent women on this show. What motivates you to do it is, to me, the question. Hey, Girja, I am running this movement and I am mad about it. I want to do it. I want to take it forward so that women have gender equality everywhere. We are equal. We are born equal, one human being, one human race, one love. That's what it is. Ladies and gentlemen, what a great story of surging to excellence from stress, stretch, sadness, from pain to gain. I have no words but to thank you, Amanda, for your beautiful journey which you shared, which was complicated every time you touched it, every time you lived, but you made it big. This is the biggest learning of the storytelling session of today, which people who have attended or who are going to be watching it later will learn out of it and make their life better by learning, relearning, and unlearning. On behalf of Global Talent and on behalf of hashtag Women Power, my sincere thanks to you, Amanda, for being my guest of honor today. And we should remain connected, and you should sometime travel to India to share your story in face-to-face program, if not in this year, maybe next year, but sometime when everything is normal and we can move from boundaries without any issues and without any challenges. Because India is ready to heal the world by aggressive vaccination program and sending it to almost 90 countries. I feel proud to be an Indian that we are healing the world under the leadership of Prime Minister Modi. Thank you very much, Amanda. Good night to you. You are
Thank you.
already at 11 p.m. and wish you all
Yes.
the best for your endeavors. Let's remain in
Thank you
touch.
very much. Thank you for having me.
God bless you and wish you all the best, ladies and gentlemen who participate into this. Good luck and enjoy your day in your America, Canada, late evening in your Europe or Africa, and good night in Australia and Asia Pacific. All the best. God bless everybody. One woman, one world, one human race, one love. Let's spread and let's make room for women to be successful. Equal opportunities for women. All the best and good night. Bye
Thank
bye.
you.